What's going on, y'all? Hopefully this is the last time I make an Xbox video for a while, because it just seems like they keep kind of slipping up and I don't want to keep, talking about it, but it is interesting to talk about. Let's get into it. So Xbox is experimenting with and thinking about introducing cloud gaming. And essentially what would happen is when you play games from the cloud, think about like streaming from Netflix or Hulu, right? You go on the app, you click on what you want to watch, and then you just kind of start watching it immediately. And what's happening is your phone is receiving the information of the movie or TV show real time, nonstop. There's like a connection between you and like the Netflix or Hulu servers. The same thing would be happening with Microsoft, where they put games on there, like let's just say Call of Duty or Halo or Gears of War. Those games would come straight to your device. And I want to talk about the quality of that later. But for now, that's the idea, where you would play those games for free, no Game Pass needed. But technically, you'd be paying with your time, because they would roll 2 minutes of ads before the game starts up, which probably gives them time to download enough of the game to get it up and running. And then the game would be using, I'm not sure what the logistics of the system looks like, but that 2 minute window to download like the base part of the game, get it up and going, and then you'll stream the rest of the game, which again, that sounds hard to do, but that's how it would work. Now, the stipulation is that you would be getting ads more or less on the hour, every hour, and you can do that up to 5 hours per month, which most people probably pay for like an hour or two a night or a few times out the week. So that is not enough. So it kind of begs the question, if you're going to cap it at 5, why introduce it? My thought process is that they're just going to introduce it at some point for free, and then they'll add tiers where it's like, if you want 10 to 20 hours, go up to the middle tier for $15 a month. And then if you want like 20 to 40 hours a month of this service, you'd be paying for a Game Pass, and then you'd be getting the streaming, the cloud gaming piece, as well as playing games day one. So it's going to be kind of weird, because it's like, if you look at it from a cloud gaming perspective, if you only get 5 hours, you're mostly just kind of demoing games to see if you're curious about paying for them full price. So what's to stop me from playing games on my Xbox? And I'm like, okay, you know what, this is cool. And then I just go buy it on my PC, or I go buy it on my PlayStation, just to give, Xbox a good middle finger. I mean, to be fair, I would think that if you tried it with Xbox, you would think like, hey, Xbox, let me try this game out for an hour. I like it. I'll go ahead and pay for the full game, because who's really going to try to play through a game that's story driven for only 5 hours a month? Most people kind of eat it up because it's the new exciting thing. So like, I don't know how that's going to work. I think the idea is that people test out games and then they just buy them. That's what it sounds like they're doing. Or, it's kind of pushing people up into the higher tiers, which, I mean, I guess this would help with the purchase of Ultimate Game Pass, but $350 a year is just insane by itself. That would have to come way down for cloud gaming to be worth it. So I think that's what they're trying to do, but I don't think that's going to work. I want to put a caveat on that. I don't think it's going to work well for the bigger, longer games, but if you're looking to check out indie stuff and you're bored, or smaller games that you never gave a chance, like, this is an opportunity to check that stuff out, especially if you decided to not continue your Game Pass. Then in a sense, you could still have like Game Pass Lite, where you could stream those games and check them out, and then decide if you want to buy it full price, instead of trying to play for 5 hours every month, because that's ridiculous. So I mean, I guess that's like the adjacent to that. But again, Xbox, when you, as a business, you're introducing products because you're trying to make money. So it's like, how are they making money off of this potential cloud gaming service, other than tying it into Game Pass, right? And Game Pass has kind of already shot itself in the foot. So really the next step is just to kind of let, demo smaller games. And then hopefully, in good faith, because Xbox demoed it, like I said earlier, players would be more likely to buy it on that platform. I don't know how well this system would work on bigger games like Call of Duty. Now, of course, there's multiplayer and getting ads on the hour, which I'm assuming that this is going to be mostly single player games. I haven't seen any confirmation on multiplayer. So I keep touching my head, my hair is soft. So I don't know what that piece looks like. The smart decision would be to keep it single player for a while, until they could introduce ways, like they would have to work with developers to kind of maybe put in like, okay, the hour's coming up, you just got to have a match, we'll give you your ads a little bit early, and then you can play your next match. Like, that would make sense, or something like that, because you don't want to get ads mid-match, because that would just make them go viral in a really negative way. So yeah, I I kind of see the idea of like a gesture of faith, like, hey, sample the game. If you like it, buy it with us without having Game Pass, which is another good gesture of faith. But overall, I mean, it just seems like, and I'm going to step away from cloud gaming because I feel like I've kind of summarized my thoughts there. It just seems like the company is struggling to make money, and it just seems like they've had a lot of good opportunities to make money. Like the Game Pass was in a great state or in a great spot financially. They made $5 billion from it. And there's been reports of this. I'll put some stuff up on the screen, but there's been reports and talk of how, and this is a fact, that Call of Duty Black Ops 6 was on Game Pass last year. So what that means is that they did not make money from Call of Duty directly. Xbox paid Activision I will say that Xbox owned Activision at that point. So I'm not sure how the logistics of that works. But in theory, because they made it free to so many players who were buying through Game Pass, they were losing out $60, $70 for every person who played Call of Duty. So I would imagine that the amount of money they could have made just making people pay for it versus throwing it on Game Pass to try and get people to buy Game Pass did not pan out the way they wanted to. And there's talk that it was about $300 million that they lost out on due to Game Pass. And I guess they were hoping people would buy it and stay on it, but people probably bought it for a month or two, then canceled it and didn't get their money's worth, considering Game Pass was only $11 a month. You're talking about $20 versus getting $70 per player. You know what I mean? And I think that's the reason why the price hikes are going up. Not that that's connected to the cloud gaming piece at all, but I just wanted to talk about that and their series of bad decisions and how they're kind of digging their own grave. And in my opinion, I get that they tried it to entice people to buy it and stay on it. But if I owned the company and I made a business decision that did not work out financially for me, but my customers enjoyed it, I would just take that one on the chin and say, okay, it didn't work out. And I wouldn't try to screw over my customers in another way to make up for the money on my bad decision. I feel like when that kind of stuff happens, you want to lead with generosity and you want to say, okay, I just won't do that next year. You know, we tried it, it didn't work out. It won't happen next year. Everything stays the same. Instead, I feel like they're being greedy and they're really trying to make up for money that they lost. And the reality is that Game Pass made them $5 billion. I talked about this in another video. They made $5 billion between July of last year and June of this year. $5 billion compared to 300 million, which are both massive amounts of money, but 300 million, I mean, it takes $999 million and then the $1 at the very end to go up to $1 billion. They made so much more money than what they lost that it's ridiculous that they would even think that they need to recoup money from a bad decision. You know, like it's actually insane on how greedy that is. And the company is doing just fine. So it's super weird to me that they're really trying to, you know, like I said, make up for those lost sales. But I think that's what's happening. And I think this is just another nail in the coffin along the many issues they've had where they've decided to put their exclusives on PlayStation, which reduces the value of getting an Xbox. Why would I get an Xbox when their games are also on the PlayStation and then PlayStation has its own exclusives? It just makes sense to buy the PlayStation. And then on top of that, you announce to the community that you've built over the years that, hey, we're thinking about stopping making Xboxes because it's just not working out. People aren't buying them enough. You know, give them reasons to buy them. Don't put your exclusives on someone else's console. You know, put better hardware in there so that it runs better. You know, there's all kinds of entertainment features they could have packed into the Xbox and maybe made it work. And I'm sure they tried, but I don't think they tried hard enough. But then you also look at things like where they bought Bethesda, which Bethesda's reputation, I would say overall is okay. They started off as a legendary studio, and as time has gone on, buggy games and low quality, but there's nothing saying that they can't turn that around and get them back on path, make some Bethesda exclusive games to make incentive for people to choose an Xbox over a PlayStation, and then go from there. But they didn't do that. They bought Activision. They could have made Call of Duty an Activision only game. Technically speaking, all platforms purchase Call of Duty, so they would lose money. Like Call of Duty as a game in a studio would lose money long term, but in the long haul, it would bolster sales of Xbox going forward with the next release of a console, because now you have to factor in Call of Duty games, and that was a missed opportunity. They wanted to play ball and play nice, and I get it. You know, Activision makes more money, and I guess technically if they own it, it all comes back to them. But if you want to sell more consoles and rebuild your base, then I think you give up some of the money that you really don't need up front, make it an exclusive, and then incentive to buy consoles in the future and continue the longevity of Xbox. So that was a big one. You know, I feel like I was expecting that, and I'm surprised they didn't come through and pull the trigger on that. And last but not least, I just think they put too much faith in Game Pass, which was fine where it was at $11 from a consumer standpoint, right? Because I'm not big business. I think it was fine where it was at. I think they just loaded way too many games after this Xbox showcase that happened earlier this year. There's a bunch of games that's coming out in these coming months that are going to be on Game Pass, and chances are they're going to lose money on that instead of make money. They could have just released the games, people would buy them, they'd make a flat profit. Instead, you're putting it on Game Pass. I start my Game Pass trial or whatever, I pay $29.99 for a month. I play through 4 or 5 of the games they add to Game Pass. I then turn it off. All they got was $30, where I get $150, $200 value because I was able to play 5 or 6 games in the course of 30 days, which is a lot of time, to be fair. But even if it takes 2 months and I pay $60 to play 5 or 6 games, the consumer comes out on top right there, and they're not winning. So, I mean, I get not doing anti-consumer stuff like Nintendo. However, I think that the decisions they're making, they're losing money, and then they're doing things to try to recoup the money that is anti-consumer. You know, it's quite the blender they're in right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if like 3 or 4 years from now, Xbox is strictly digital and they don't have exclusives. And I think we are starting to see the actual fall of a major AAA, maybe AAA studio / company platform. I really think it's in a heavy decline right now. I don't really think there's a way out of this. They're going to release games still, but if they're not Xbox exclusive, there's really no incentive to get it. I think we are seeing the final years of Xbox, unless they can really pull in Activision, Bethesda, maybe acquire a few other studios and start making exclusives and just double back on that plan. Just restart from scratch, redo the Game Pass. I do not foresee the company lasting. If it does last for anything more than a decade, it's going to be a shell of itself, and it'll just be really loyal, hardcore fans. And I think the company I think it's going into, what's the word? When you're in a hospice. I feel like Xbox is going into hospice right now. You know, there's no damage control. They're just doubling down on, just bad decision after bad decision. Yeah. It's been crazy to watch over these last couple of years what they've been doing. I thought, the purchase of Bethesda and Activision was a huge step in the right direction, and then he just completely fumbled it. So, but that's all I had. I'm done rambling about Xbox. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Like, sub, definitely comment what you think on all of this. And I'll be back tomorrow, hopefully, or next time with more content. So y'all stay locked in. Y'all stay safe. It's crazy out there. Peace.